This evening's practice is closing out the year, softening our shoulders. And when we have soft shoulders, we have room for a strong heart. I just made that up. But I think it's going to feel really good. So I want you to have two bolsters. If you have the option to have a rectangle and a round, great. If not, do what you can with what you've got. I want you to have two blocks and then a blanket as well. You won't need a strap this evening. And if you'll go ahead and get your space set up as I've got mine, we're going to start in Supta Baddha Konasana, but minus the strap. So you can see I've got a block at the head of my mat. I have it on its lowest side. You can take it up, the block, as high as you'd like. The higher you take your block, the less extension you'll experience in your spine. So, for example, if your low back is giving you some crap today or this week or this year, then take your block up so that the extension in the spine isn't quite so extreme. The lower your block, the more of a lumbar extension you'll receive. So you can play with it and determine what size or what height rather is best for you on this particular day and evening in this particular moment in time. I have a blanket at the head of my mat as well, or I mean at the top of the bolster rather. So it acts as a little bit of a pillow. And then we're going to just drape our legs over the bolster underneath our knees. Back yourself up to your ramp. I typically like to encourage you to have about a fist width between your sacrum and the bolster, and then just roll on back. Adjust your blanket under your head. It's wise to have a little bit of a lift to your head, which is why I've got the blanket there for you, so that your forehead, from your forehead to your chin to your heart, there's a sense of the energy descending, if you will. And then arms can rest out at your sides, a comfortable distance from your body. Once you get settled into the props, take a deeper breath in and exhale from your mouth. Imagining that exhalation can melt tension away from your jaw, your shoulders, your neck. And you might do that one or two more times, a full lung expanding breath through your nose, inhaling, and then a sweet, slow exhale through your mouth, allowing your jaw to unhinge, inviting your tongue to drop to the base of your mouth and broaden. Wait. If you want to bring yourself into a more classic Baddha Konasana shape, you can draw your knees up a little bit, bring your heels together, and then let your knees drop apart from one another, creating this diamond shape with your legs. And also, if you've got sandbags nearby, having a sandbag draped over the instep of your feet, kind of draped over both feet, that feels really nice. It's very grounding, particularly if you've been a bit scattered over the holiday. That's a nice spot for a sandbag. Another nice spot for a sandbag is across your pelvis, across your hip bones. We're not going to do anything exotic with our breath right now. I just want you to drop into your body, let your body drop into your props, be held, be enveloped. The structure of the props will do the work for us of gently broadening our collarbones, expanding our sternum and our front ribs. Providing enough height at our shoulders so that our arms just drape over the edge of the bolster. Very soft. We're just over 5 minutes into this shape. I want you to just do a soft, mindful body scan from your toes up to your nose and beyond, and identify if there's any tension that has crept back into your body, any kind of automatic tightening through your shoulder girdle, your throat, or your jaw. Any unconscious clenching of your thighs or your buttocks, maybe through your wrist or your hands. And if you identify those places, it's not an opportunity to be judgmental or critical. None of us are doing this wrong. In fact, observing and becoming aware is actually doing it quite right. So when these spots show up for you, these hot spots, these tight spots, just imagine that you could direct traffic with your breath and pull an inhalation to that space, to that area. Visualize that you're massaging that hot spot, that tight spot, with prana, with oxygen, pulling oxygenated blood into the region, like a massage. Then maybe there's an opportunity there. It feels right for you to exhale through your mouth. A big sigh of relief and release. 2021 is almost to an end. No idea what's in store for 2022, but we know it'll be a little different. And more importantly, we know we have the tools to walk into it, to face it, to embrace it, to be present for it, for ourselves, for our families, for our communities. Take a deeper breath in. Become aware of your ribs expanding, not just to the front, but to the side as well as into the back. And as you exhale this breath, start to move your fingers and your toes, begin to animate your body and maybe stretch your legs. Take your arms up over your head if your shoulders allow for that range of motion at this point. Big stretch, big breath. Bending your knees, set your feet onto the bolster and roll the bolster forward towards the end of your mat. Make your way over to one side. Gently roll off of your bolster ramp. And slowly lift yourself up. We're going to come up just long enough, high enough to move the gear off of our mat. So we're going to do a little bit of movement for a few minutes before we go back into our static shapes. So bolster off, blanket off, and come all the way down onto your back, please. Stretch your arms out to the side like a T. Keep your knees bent and your feet on the floor. Drop your knees inward so they rest against one another. And we'll take a few breaths, hitting the pause button, allowing our sacrum to expand and the lower back to soften, particularly after the spinal extension of the previous shape. Watch your breath as it draws in through your nose. Notice where it navigates with ease, where it migrates with ease. Notice where there's any obstruction or congestion. And before we do any more movement or any movement at all, really bring your awareness into your back body and observe where your shoulder blades are, the scapula. Notice if one feels heavier than the other. And take a look with your mind's eye at your shoulders, the deltoids and the glenohumeral joint, what we typically think of as the shoulder joint, and notice if one's a little higher than the other. Even moving out through your arms, does one arm feel heavier than the other? Notice if one hand cups more so than the other, or if the fingers curl more so in one hand than the other. All of these little intricacies are indications where we might have imbalances in our shoulder girdle, all the way down to our wrists, our palms, our fingers. Let's take our arms straight up to the ceiling so the palms face one another, and then you'll bend your elbows, taking opposite hands to opposite elbows so your forearms are right in front of your collarbones, coming into what I call somatic rock. Step your feet onto your mat about hip distance apart. This is your inhalation. Breathing out, glide your arms over to the right, drop your knees to the left. I'm going to invite you to just take your head with your arms. So follow your elbows with your head and your eyes. As you inhale, come back up through center, knees up, forearms up. And when you exhale, take your arms to the left and your knees to the right. Good. And let's go twice more from side to side, just being the observer, witnessing if going to one side feels a bit more resistant or constricted than the other. Again, a gentle reminder to try to avoid judging or critiquing our bodies. Why are they the way they are? It's simply acknowledging it with a sense of interest and curiosity, recognizing that we're all a little off kilter. When your arms are going to the left and your knees drop to the right, this next time I'm going to have you linger there for a few breaths. You can kind of play with your right shoulder and your right arm. Roll it down in its shoulder, in its socket, roll it up. Just kind of move it around in the joint. When you take your next breath in, come back up to the center and change the cross of your forearms. And I'm going to have you exhale and take your arms to the left again and your knees to the right. So we were just here. We're going to use this as the starting gate now with our arms crisscrossed in the different way. Inhale through center. Exhale, let your arms go to the right, knees to the left. Good, and keep going 2 more times from side to side. When your arms are going to the right, knees dropping to the left, I'll have you stay there. And once again, kind of rolling this left upper arm, rolling it a little bit one way and the other way in the shoulder girdle, noticing how this side presents differently than the other side. Notice if there's any more or less movement. Maybe the sensation is quite different. Good. Come back up through center, please. Release your arms to your sides. Drop your knees inward. Let them rest against one another. Let's take about a 15-second pause. Checking in with your shoulders once again. And this time, noticing also temperature. Is there warmth? Is there pulsing? Is there any rushing of blood, of lymph, of energy through your shoulders, your neck, your arms, your hands? Good. Roll over to your left side, please. And this is a good spot if you want to use your blanket as a pillow. You're welcome to do so. And take one of your bolsters, set it between your knees. Knees are bent and stacked one on top of the other, coming into open book in the PT world. And then we'll make our way into a supine twist that we'll hang out in for a bit. So arms are stacked, knees are stacked. As you breathe in, sweep your right arm straight up to the ceiling and back behind you. And as you breathe out, you'll bring your right arm up and over, resting it on your left arm. Good, and keep going 4 more times. We'll do a total of 5. Allow your head to roll freely with your arm, not forcing it to go in any particular direction or to go too far. So that's about 4. I'm going to have you switch gears on this 5th one. So instead of taking your right arm up to the ceiling, I'm going to have you sweep your right arm up over your head so your arm is right above your ear. And once you get your arm to 12 o'clock, I'm going to have you stay there for a few breaths. Maybe your fingertips will come to the floor beyond your head. It might be a good idea to put a block underneath your right hand. And as you reach your right fingertips beyond your head, I want you to shear your outer right hip away from your ribs. You might notice a corresponding shortening to your left waist as you lengthen your right waist. Good. Breathe deeply into your right ribs, all the way up into your right armpit. Take one more inhalation. And now when you exhale, go ahead and complete the twist, taking your right arm back behind you to, I guess that would be 9 o'clock. And then we'll pause here. Notice if there's any tingling in your right hand, right fingers. Let your arm move around a bit. So there's plenty of blood flow. So there's plenty of space in the nerves for energy to move, for prana to flow. We're going to stay about another minute, and I want you to experiment with what changes if you'll bend your right elbow, bringing your right arm into a cactus shape. Just identify what happens in your scapula, throughout your shoulder girdle. Notice if the back of your right hand can rest with ease on the floor. Or if there's constriction there. Stretch your right arm out once again. And when the next breath shows up for you, sweep your right arm up to the ceiling and over until it lands on your left arm. Go slow. Once your right hand lands on your left hand, slide your right hand forward onto the floor beyond your left hand, even allowing your forehead to roll onto your blanket or your mat. Great. Come back through neutral and let's make our way over to the other side. Bring your bolster with you. Roll onto your right side. Knees bent. Head on your pillow if you like that. I like it. I like it quite well. Knees stacked, arms stacked. Here we go. Breathing in, left arm sweeps up to the ceiling and behind you. And exhaling, left arm comes back up and over. Great. We'll do this a total of 5 times. And if you'll remember, on your 5th time, we're just going to take our arm beyond our head instead of up to the ceiling. When you get to the 5th round, don't rush, of course, but you'll just sweep your left arm up to 12 o'clock. If your fingertips don't want to get to the floor tonight, that's okay. Don't force. Let your fingers, your hand rest on a block. And then we're going to hang in this side body stretch for a few breaths. And as you reach your left fingertips away from your left ribs, you'll shear your outer left hip in the other direction, away from your ribs. Okay, on an exhale, when you let go of your next breath, allow your left arm to complete the twist, reaching behind you to 3 o'clock. Draw your knees up a little closer to your right elbow. Hmm. Now, if you'd like, you can explore the prospect of bending your left elbow, bringing your arm into a cactus shape. Noticing what, if any, difference that makes in your left shoulder, particularly along your left shoulder blade. Unhinge your left arm if you bent it. Give yourself an in-breath. When you exhale, sweep your left arm up and over. Let it be lazy, let it be languid. When your left arm lands on your right, allow your left hand to slide forward off your right hand. Reach, reach, reach. Good. Draw your left arm back slightly so you're into neutral once more. And I'm going to have you roll onto your belly. So once you get onto your belly, you can keep your blanket just out here beyond your forehead, and you can have a block on standby as well. You might want to use it. So what I want to say is that what I've learned in the world of yoga therapy, what's showing up for yoga therapists around the country, probably around the world really, is that some of these effects of long COVID, one is actually frozen shoulder, which is kind of crazy. I mean, you would think, what the hell does that have to do with COVID? But what's happening is that it's inflammation, and it's people having to stay in bed for so long and being sedentary, whether it's in the hospital or at home, but being sedentary and in bed for so long, that the tissues, the fascia, connective tissue around our shoulder girdle gets stuck and adhered, right? So what we've learned, what we know to be true, is that any of these motions where we go transverse, where we take the arm across the midline, like we do in our somatic rock when we're on our back, one of the hands down best things you can do for frozen shoulder. I mean, across the board. Tell me I'm wrong. I just know it. So, I mean, think about eagle pose, Garudasana, another great move for slowly kind of heating up, defrosting, if you will, a frozen shoulder. So we're going to go into what the yin folk call, I think they call this whale's tail. So on your belly, forearms crossed out in front of you. It doesn't matter which one's in front. We're going to do them both. Begin to inch your fingertips off your sticky mat until you've got your arms pretty much as far as they're going to go. From there, I like to tuck toes, give yourself a little forward. You can rest your forehead either on the edge of your blanket. And if the floor still seems safe, then lift up out of it, up of your forehead. It's kind of a yin restorative mashup tonight. We're going to stay here for several minutes. I would encourage you to loosen your legs, let your legs wiggle a little from side to side. to exit this, which is appropriate. So as you're ready, you're just going to inch your elbows towards one another until you're back up onto your forearms. And let your sternum and ribs melt towards the floor. And then you'll move your other forearm out front. And here we go again, crisscross applesauce, inching your fingertips off your sticky mat. Adjustments to placement of your forehead. Noticing how this side might present differently than the previous side. More or less mobility. Tension. Tuck your toes under. Give yourself a little nudge forward so there's a true sense. Body and where are you drifting? So often, frozen shoulder is associated with trauma, physical trauma, injury of some sort. I find it really fascinating that it's becoming more and more common in sedentary people, particularly those who had to deal with chronic inflammation. And I think the fascia and the connective tissue, sort of like taffy, and how hard taffy is so brittle that it can break if bent with too much force. But yet, if we spend time with it, give it a little heat, a movement, move it around between our hands and our fingers, just like getting a massage, the taffy and the tissue likewise becomes more malleable, more pliable, and more buoyant. Begin inching your elbows towards the center of your mat. Come all the way down. Turn your head to the right. Arms can be in whatever shape feels supportive for you. Turn your head to the left. Bring your forehead to the floor. Place your hands under your shoulders. Let's make a detour through child's pose, pressing yourself up and taking your hips back. And then lifting yourself up, and let's come into a supported fish pose for just a couple of minutes. I'm going to have you use one of your bolsters. If you've got a round bolster, go with that choice. And bring a block onto its tallest height, just beyond your round bolster. Turn around with the round bolster to your back. Bring your elbows down to the bolster, and then just pause for a moment. I want you to figure out the placement of the bolster. I'd like it to be about bra line. And when you've got it there, then you can roll back, adjust the block so that it supports the back of your head. And you can take your arms out to the sides, so your arms are beyond the bolster. You're welcome to experiment with taking your block down a notch. But just go down one notch if you choose to do that. And then we're just going to be here for a couple of minutes. You can take your legs down onto the mat or keep your knees bent, whatever feels the best for you and your body. You can crisscross your legs if you want, one shin out front. Focus is on broadening the sternum, broadening the collarbones, expanding the ribs, creating a vast space for your large, large heart, large, strong, compassionate heart, both the physical, the anatomical heart, and the energetic, yogic heart. Great. I'm going to have you bend your knees, set your feet to the floor if they're not. Let yourself roll gently over to one side. Lift yourself up so you can slide the bolster out from underneath your back. Ooh, that's tender. And take this bolster under your knees. Return to your back. Use your blanket either under your head as a pillow or cozy yourself up. By draping the blanket over your body. Come into a brief Shavasana. Of course, you can stay in Shavasana as long as you'd like. Just let your body land, let it drop into the floor. And notice where it lands. Check in with your shoulders again, your arms, your hands. If you could take a snapshot of yourself from above, look at your head, your ears. Does your head naturally gravitate to one side? It's okay if it does. And just see it, feel it. And after you've taken a brief inventory, you've taken stock of your physical body, then just let yourself drop in deep. Allow yourself to be enveloped by your props, the mat, the floor beneath you. Yogis, our time has come to an end, but I do want to encourage you to stay in Shavasana for as long as your time permits, your obligations permit. Otherwise, bend knees and roll to one side. Bring yourself up. Check in with your shoulders, your neck, and your heart. Take our arms up overhead. Gather the prana between your two hands and slowly bring your thumbs to your third eye. And slide your fingertips to your lips. Rest your hands at your heart. Thank you for joining me.